May it please the spirit of Trinity-Pawling, to the Board of Trustees and Board Chairman Eric Olstein, to the headmaster Bill Taylor, to the faculty and staff, to Donna B., who's pretty amazing, to all the parents, family, visitors, friends, but most importantly to the graduates of the class of 2022. What's up, fellas? That's it, man. You've gotten to this particular point, and while I heard Headmaster Taylor tell about my story and the fact that I was like some of you, what he didn't tell you was I was in group 5 for like 3 years, right? I struggled, but then towards the end of my last year, I really got to group 1. But I wanted to basically share this quick commencement speech to you, and it would basically be this, I guess. I didn't know what Trinity-Pawling had given me when I was sitting in your seat. I didn't know what I had been offered when I was sitting in your seat looking at someone else speak. When I was 14, that was nearly 31 years ago, if I can do my math properly. And I was here, and then I was a trustee for 2 terms, so several years. And what I recall about my process here is that last night, when I was sitting with the headmaster and with the board chairman in the Gammage house, watching and looking at this grandfather clock, you know, this clock that had the little thing that goes back and forth, time had flown by, I guess. But again, I didn't know what had been offered to me. I'm not sure if you've ever been confused about what you have, but I was. But I realized at that moment I was no longer confused, because that clock reminded me of this really silly nursery rhyme that my mom used to sing to me when I was a kid. You know, it's a nursery rhyme that has a clock within it. It's a nursery rhyme with a clock in it with that tick tock, tick tock. It's a nursery rhyme that very much talks about this thing of Hickory, Dickory, Dock, right? The mouse ran up the clock struck 12, and then the mouse ran down Hickory, Dickory, Dock. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm not sure if you've ever stopped to think about what is Hickory, Dickory, Dock. Have you ever stopped to think about it? Like, what is Hickory, Dickory, Dock? It's a grandfather clock too, right? So how does a mouse run straight up the clock? I don't get it. It's like spider mouse or something. I don't know what this means. And then it's a clock, and why is the mouse at the top of the clock? When the clock strikes 12, he's like, hey, fellas, come watch me. Watch what I'm going to do. And then he like jumps back down. Like, what is this? To end this poem or this nursery rhyme again with the idea of Hickory, Dickory, Dock. I never knew what this nursery rhyme meant, but I was speaking in Albany, New York, to a bunch of judges and Supreme Court justices and individuals, and I shared the confusion of the justice system with equating it to this nursery rhyme. And after this particular speech that I gave, a justice came up to me whose skin had been kissed by the sun, and he kept grabbing his shirt as if he was trying to grab overalls, and he came and stood in line and said, hey, Mr. Romain, I know what that nursery rhyme means. And I was like, I don't care. I didn't say that, but I was looking at my face. I don't care. And I just kind of sat there waiting for him to leave. But he was doing this thing that we lawyers call begging the question, right? I know what it means. So he's basically waiting for me to ask, well, what does it mean? And he wasn't moving. He kept rocking back and forth, grabbing his shirt. So eventually I asked the question, what does it mean? And he said, my family have all been farmers. I'm a farmer, hence the leathery skin and the overalls. And he said his father and his father for his father and father for his. I was like, all right, man, I get it. You have a history of fathers that were farmers. What does it mean? And he said this nursery rhyme of Hickory, Dickory, Dock is a way to count livestock. And now he has my attention. What do you mean, man? What do you mean? There's no way you can, huh? And he's like, well, you can't really count moving animals 1 through 15, but this nursery rhyme is a way of counting 1 through 15 without saying numbers. Hickory, Dickory, Dock, and the mouse ran up the clock struck 12, the mouse ran down, Hickory, Dickory, that's 15. I was like, all right, cool, that's cool, get out my way. Bye. A few years later, I'm driving down a real country place. I think it's like Bertie County maybe. But I was driving down this really country location in North Carolina, and I saw some cows along the road. So y'all know what I did, right? Y'all know what I did. So I kind of pulled over, and I made sure there was no farmers around because I didn't want to get shot. And I was looking And I counted 1 through 15 cows in numbers, like 1, 2, 3 to 15. And then without anybody looking at me, I did the whole hickory dickory dock, right? And I did the whole thing, and it was 15. I was like, oh my God, it really works. And I swear there was one cow that looked at another cow and was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? But again, I don't know if I know what I had been given when I was looking at the headmaster's clock in his gamage house. I don't know if I know, fellas, what I had been given when I was sitting in your seat. I don't know if you know what you've been given as the brotherhood of the class of 2022. Do you know what you've been given? 3 quick things, and again, I'll have a seat. Number 1 is this effort system, right? I mean, you wake up early in the morning at 7 o'clock, and then you go from your dorm, wherever you lived, and you go down to the dining hall, right? And you're in the dining hall, you get your food and you eat. And if you don't eat in the morning, you won't really eat until lunchtime. Then after you go to the lunchroom or the breakfast room in the dining hall, you then go over to what we used to go to All Saints, to the chapel. We would sit in chapel, and we would hear announcements or speeches or whatever. And then after chapel, we would go to Danbury for our classes. After classes, for several hours, we would go back to the dining hall, and we had regular lunch. You all had sit-down lunch. After sit-down lunch, we returned back to the classroom. After classes, then you go to your dorm and change into your athletic gear and have sports, and after sports, dinner, and then after dinner, we have clubs and groups and organizations, and then after that was study hall, and we did it over and over and over and over, and I hated it, man. I'm telling you, I hated it. Mr. Foster, make sure he's not too close. But I used to hate it, man. Like, he was my dorm parent in Dunbar, and I used to never go. He'd come knock on my door, TC, get up. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not going. I didn't like him then. I don't like him too much now because of that, right? I still have flashbacks, man. but it was simply, again, this notion or this idea that we were doing things all day long. And I don't know if you realize what you've been given through this effort system. Maybe as an example, Kobe Bryant once said that his teammates would wake up around 8 or 9 o'clock, and they would practice for like 2 or 3 hours until like noon or 1 or whatever, and then they would eat lunch for 3 or 4 hours, and then they would go back and practice between 4 to 6, and then go home and play Nintendo or Xbox or whatever, right? And Kobe Bryant said he would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, begin practice at 3:30, and work from 3:30 till 8 o'clock in the morning, then for an hour spend time with his family, and then be back in the gym at 9 o'clock. And then work all day long, and he would work out all day long. And by the time it was 9 o'clock that night, he had put in almost double the hours that his teammates did. Michael Jordan of the UNCC fame, and particularly the UNC fame, and particularly the GOAT, as he is often known, is known to have been cut from his high school basketball team, right? But as Tony Robbins tells the story, he wasn't just cut from his team and then that was it. His coach said to him, I'm cutting you because of your attitude. But if you want to make the team next year, if you want to try out next year, then meet me in the gym at 6 a.m. every morning, and we'll see what happens next year. And guess what he did? At 6 a.m. every morning for the whole year, he showed up. That's called effort. And the founder of this particular school, Dr. Gamage, who I think was the first headmaster, basically said, and has this quote written somewhere on a wall somewhere, that effort inevitably yields achievement. And if you put the effort in, you will achieve what you're aiming for. Effort inevitably yields achievement. You don't realize it now, but when you get to college, you're going to be that much more advanced than almost 99% of everyone else there. It's going to be easy for you to do the things that you're called to do. But that's the question ultimately that I think we got to ask. What is it that you're called to do? Point number 2. There was a gentleman named Chukwunzi Akobi who loved Miss McDougal more than anything else in the world. And he was my classmate. And he was not a big figure, wasn't really a daunting figure, but he played football here, and then he worked out every day. And he committed himself. He was convicted that he wanted to be in the NFL one day, but he was too short. He wasn't good enough, many folks would say. He was my teammate, my classmate. We played football together, and he and his roommate then, Manny De La Cruz, which I think some of y'all may have heard a couple years ago come and speak, he and Manny worked out all the time. We're taking milkshakes and protein shakes. He was in the weight room. He was lifting. He was a manager for like the squash team. So when the squash folks were playing, he could be in the gym hanging out, working out. He ended up getting picked up by Purdue and was the center for Drew Brees, Hall of Famer Drew Brees, and worked hard. And he went to the Rose Bowl, and he was putting in that effort that we all have been taught here. And he continued to put in the effort to where he got picked up or was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and some years later received and won a Super Bowl championship. But it was all because of the effort that he put in. There was a gentleman who graduated back in '86, an old dude, real old dude. And this particular gentleman went into the Navy. And as he flew ships and things in the Navy, he had a successful career and then went into finance afterwards. And when I take my children back to San Diego to see my mother, there is a ship in the harbor of San Diego called the USS Midway aircraft carrier. And on this aircraft carrier is a fighter jet that board chairman Eric Olstein flew. So while Tom Cruise has another movie called Top Gun coming out, right? Like Tom Cruise is playing a movie, like this dude actually lived it. Like if you ever walk next to him or behind him, he sings this song, Highway to the Danger Zone, like which is an old Tom Cruise. Like he'll just sing that song by himself. Like nobody's paying you any attention, man. He kind of looks like Tom Cruise too if you squint your eye just a little bit. But maybe those guys are too old for us and you don't know who I'm talking about. Maybe those are the old guys from the 96s and the 86s. But I'm really touched by a gentleman who was in the epicenter of the coronavirus on the other side of the world. And he was so committed to returning to this institution that he did everything in his power to get back. He flew by himself during this epidemic crisis, and he was stuck in Dubai for 2 whole weeks by himself. Still doing his classwork. If I was in Dubai by myself, I was in group 5. I'm trying to remind y'all, right? But this dude was like group 1, and he was so committed to getting back that he spent 2 weeks in quarantine by himself. And then when he got to the United States, spent another 2 weeks in quarantine, and then returned to this institution of higher learning in April with just a month and a half to go and became a prefect. That's effort. And maybe, Tony, that's conviction to get an education. Maybe his conviction was to be part of this brotherhood so he could spend this day with you all. What is your conviction? What is it that you believe? What are you called to do, my brothers? What is our conviction? What convicts us? What is in us that convicts us? What us in conviction? What convicts us? Fix us in con. What conviction do we have in us? What invict us? What invict us? What out of the night that covers me, right? Black as a pole from pole to pole. I think whatever God may be for my unconquerable soul. That in the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud, that under the bludgeonings of chance my head is bloody but unbowed. That beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but just the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. For it matters not how straight the gate, nor how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate, the captain of my soul. And I pray, brothers, that you get to know who the general is. So who do you believe in? As the great philosopher of poetic justice, Tupac Shakur, once said, who do you believe in? I got my faith in God, blessed and still breathing. Who do you believe in? I can tell you all these faces of all these people that you looked at for years and days, they believe in you. You may not be able to see all the eyes that surround you as if it's a cloud of witness. These individuals believe in you too. So what is your conviction? And let me just end with this third point. and it's more of a conditional statement. If you use the effort system and combine it to what you believe in, you'll achieve real success. Where's Josh? Josh Collins. Where's Josh? There he goes. Man, Josh has always been a meathead, right? He's always been this really, really big dude. Big, y'all know it. He always just walks around big and huge. Like, we played football together. His shoulder pads were like up at his ears, right? Because he's just a big dude. He's a dean of students now, and I won't pick on him. But back when we were in school together, we used to have this thing called quad crossings. Remember that, Josh? To where, like, the seniors would always yell, "Get off the quad!" to, like, freshmen or, like, sophomores or juniors. I don't think y'all still do that or did that, but we used to do it all the time. Don't nod your head. They're looking at you, man. I'm trying to... You didn't do that. Parents, we don't do things like this anymore. Well, back in the day, we did. And there would be folks that would yell out, "Get off the quad!" And it was always funny. We'd have freshmen from East Dorm over here, like walking to or walking from Danbury back to East, and someone would yell, "Get off the quad!" And we would all stop and watch as, like, seniors would chase this little freshman who's like, "Ah!" Like, ties flying, he's dropping his papers as he gets over on the other side of the quad. He never made it to the other side of the quad. Freshmen never make it, right? At least in this hypothetical example that I am providing for you all. But there was a time when Josh, who's a 95, I was class 96. So Josh was a little older than me, or a year older than me in class. And I remember him yelling at me, "TC, get off the quad." And this wasn't like 30 years ago. This was like last year he said this to me. And I said to him, "Man, I'm a trustee. You can't do nothing to me." And he said, "TC, get off the quad." He looked at me, I looked at him, he looked at me some more. You know, he had those big old shoulders and always has a mug in his hand. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And he looked at me and I looked at him and he looked at me and I looked at him like, what? He looked at me again. I looked at him. He took a step towards me. I stepped off the quad. I'm kidding. None of that ever really happened last year. Made it all up, I think. But there was something that happens when you became a senior, right? To where this quad became cherishable grounds. To where this property and what we believe in and belong to here meant something important. I finished, I think, top 10 in group 1 upon graduation because I finally bought into the system. And I have my convictions that allow me to be who I am today. My brothers, what I'm trying to suggest to you is that if you use the effort system and combine it with your convictions, then you'll achieve greatness. In my last poem, I would simply say that if this is a conditional situation, I will never be Kobe Bryant. I will never be the GOAT in Michael Jordan. I will never be Chucky or Kobe and have a Super Bowl championship ring. I'll never fly a fighter jet like Eric Olsen. I'll never have shoulders like Josh Collins. But there is something that I do have. And there's something that we all share here in common. We graduate as gentlemen and scholars. And if I could quote a particular poem that we all can subscribe to, it would be that of If by Rudyard Kipling, right? If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait, not be tired by waiting. Or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two imposters just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the thing you've given your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap, my brothers, of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose, but start again at your beginning and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and your nerve and your sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing left in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can Talk with crowds and keep your virtue. Walk with kings and not lose your common touch. If all men count with you, but none too much. If neither foe nor loving friends can hurt you. And finally, if you can feel the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then yours is the earth and everything in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I hate to tell you that we're giving you a world that's pretty messed up. I heard the baby crying over here, and for a moment, while it could have probably just disturbed me 2 weeks ago, that baby crying meant something a whole lot more to me today than I think I would have ever realized. Because right in Texas, there's 19 babies that will never cry ever again. Albany, New York, there are people, parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles who will never hear their babies crying because they have been taken away. So who do you believe in? Which one of you is the one that's going to take us to this place we all need to go? If I could yell, as Josh Collins did, get off the quad and go make a difference. Get off the quad and use that very thing inside of you to make the world better for someone other than you. Get off the quad and be the leader we all know you to be. Because these faces and this faculty are all counting on you. The people in this cloud of witnesses are all counting on you. And I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you like Hickory, Dickory, Dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 12. The mouse ran down. Hickory, Dickory. Congratulations to the class of 2022. And welcome into the eternal brotherhood of Trinity-Pawling. Let's go, Pride.